kick it off and say once again, good afternoon and hi everyone. Welcome to First Time CEO, the shift nobody prepares you for. I'm Cristina Dumitru, the founder to leader coach, and I work with founders who are stepping into the CEO role and who need to build systems and habits to actually lead and not just operate. And today I have with me someone whose perspective I value so much because she sees this exact transition from another world, and that is the corporate C-suite. And this is Cristina Muntean, the CEO Whisperer. Cristina, thank you so much for joining me today, this conversation. And please introduce yourself.
It is my great pleasure to be here with you, Katrina. Thank you so much for having me, and hello to everyone watching us. I am originally from Romania as well, living in Prague, the Czech Republic, for the last 22 years. And I created Vornica, my company, as a vehicle to bring more good power into our region, Central Eastern, Southern Europe. And in this role, I support new CEOs. They can be first-time CEOs or established CEOs to essentially become successful on their terms, and without risking or losing their health, their career, or their sanity, while taking their company to the next level.
Wow. Thank you so much. I can see why this conversation will be interesting because obviously we both work with first-time CEOs, but as I said, in very different worlds. While I'm in the founder space, you, Cristina, are more in the corporate C-suite. And I remember as we started talking some months ago, we kept finding that there are some shifts that are very similar and others that are completely different. So today we're going to unpack that and see what we can actually learn from each other. So to everyone who's watching, we are happy to answer your questions and read about your experience with this. So please share in the comments as we go, and we'll weave them in. Now, good that we've got all the setup done. Let's jump right in. And I'll go to my first question for you, Cristina, since you've worked with so many new CEOs. What's the first thing that they get wrong about the role?
I believe that many CEOs, and interestingly enough, it's not just first-time CEOs, but even established CEOs may underestimate the complexity of the role. Particularly first-time CEOs may underestimate the impact that their word has now that they are CEOs. So I saw in practice that the newly appointed CEO would just want to bounce back some ideas and some opinions, but they forget that now that they are the CEO. So the people in the executive team may have a tendency to take those ideas bounced back and forth as operational orders, and they just go and execute. So we need to, I encourage first-time CEOs to become aware of the fact that now all the all the limelight is on you, that everyone is looking up to you, and that this carries a special type of weight that very few can prepare you for once you enter the CEO role.
No pressure, right? Okay. So I have a challenge, like do something very, very quick. If you could finish this sentence, the biggest lie that first-time CEOs tell themselves is
that it is about them, or that they have already made it. So I see that, when you're appointed CEO, this comes with this sense of, oh my God, like I achieved it. I want to take a picture of this moment and send it to my family and to everyone. But that's actually just the beginning of a marathon. And throughout this marathon, you really need to pace yourself. You really need to, calibrate your energy. So, my friend, you didn't make it. You just got permission to start making it. And probably you will start looking, you can say that you've made it by the time you can exit the company, and that company is way better than it was when you took it over, and you can leave behind a reliable legacy, an enduring legacy, if you will.
I can already see the differences between the two perspectives. So I will try to answer the same question or complete the same sentence. And so the biggest lie founders tell themselves is that leadership is for later or for bigger companies and larger teams. I hear this very often with some of my clients, with founders who consider leadership a thing that's in a very distant phase. And what does leadership actually means? It's having a vision and taking ownership to actually bring this vision to life and designing the business and the organization so that it supports this. Always acting with integrity as well. So from this point of view, leadership is quite useful from the get-go. You don't need to wait to lead. But there's a moment when I think it starts to pile up the pressure, and you can feel it. And this is the moment when the business gains traction, or you scale the business and complexity increases. And you start to feel the pressure, not because there is more to do, but because the business requires something different of you and you haven't figured out what it is. So from my point of view, it doesn't matter if you have a team of 5 or 50 or 500, you can start stepping into your leader shoes as soon as possible.
If I may build on what you just said, I have utmost empathy with founders who grow into this situation when they need to start building a reliable executive team, processes for the executive team and cascading for the whole organization. Essentially, building the vehicle that will meet the expectations placed upon you and your team by the customers and by the investors, potentially. And where I have most compassion is that incorporate very often you will have leaders around you. So you've got even these informal role models you can look up to, you can have a conversation. After all, you are in this bigger established structure, and it is easier to learn from people or to even hide when you don't feel ready for the next step. While founders, when they step into the CEO role, they got nowhere to hide, right? They're alone in the wild, trying to create a vehicle that works for everyone. And for that, I have a lot of empathy and compassion.
That's so nicely said, and this is also one of the reasons that I work with CEOs in founder-led companies, because indeed in such companies they don't have an infrastructure that's already available and it's working. They actually need to build it along with growing the business and making it work. So it's very hard to balance these two areas. And especially hard in moments of growth or scaling, as I said. So speaking of this transition, because it's a process, as we're talking about it right now, I can see this. I know that you have a specific framework for how new CEOs can navigate this transition more smoothly and successfully. If you were to pick 2 or 3 things that matter the most, what would you say?
Well, I built this framework because, 16 years ago, I lost my job as a journalist. I was a business reporter. And when I lost my job, I decided to go on my own and to work with essentially CEOs, teaching them how to talk to the media. And I've been doing this for 16 years. So I saw so many CEOs hitting the same challenges and obstacles again and again. So my framework is called PACE, which means literally pace yourself as you enter this new role, because you will need all your energy and wisdom. And a couple of key moments. P, for example, stands for position yourself for success. It's very interesting that many, colleagues who are appointed CEOs, well, in the best case, they have a bit of time before starting in the new role, right? So let's hope that they will have 2, 3 months before, the D-Day when they actually start. And this is the time when you can prepare yourself, you can craft the vision. But here is something that many future CEOs forget. They forget or they underestimate doing this type of subtle legwork of going, identifying their key stakeholders, future stakeholders, and having conversations with them about their expectations from the new CEO. Because once you understand those expectations, you can start crafting your positioning. Some companies need you as the visionary who comes in with a new, fresh vision and drives the company into the future. Some companies need someone who is a compassionate curator of value. Some companies need a diligent and disciplined administrator. Some company needs the hero who comes and, transforms, take the company out of crisis. So unless you understand your stakeholders' expectations, you may build a vision and position yourself in the light of what you think success should be, and not in the light of the real expectations of the people who can make or break your success. So preparing yourself, positioning yourself, extremely important. And one more thing, very much around the time of the announcement, and I saw this as a journalist, and it pained me. That's why I pay so much attention to it. In many cases, when I was a journalist and I would reach out, I would hear about a new CEO appointment, and I would want to talk to that person because, they're new and they're fresh and they must have something interesting to say. But they would hide. They would hide. They would be like, oh, I'm too fresh in the role and I'm not sure what to say. I'm sure that from a risk management and perception management perspective, it may be safe for them, but it may not send the right signal to the market. In terms of external communication, that the new CEO is ready to fall on their feet and start running. So perhaps another aspect that I would emphasize is building a robust, healthy, and reliable communication strategy for interactions with this type of, soft external stakeholders like the media, because the media will be hungry for you and you will be missing opportunities unless you are actually getting your ducks in a row before you start in the role.
Okay. I heard you saying expectations and that they assume what the expectations are.
Mhm.
And I see the same with founders. It's just that what I notice is that they put their own expectations,
Mhm.
and these are so, so high. These are standards that sometimes nobody can reach. It's like being everything at once and in a minute. Like once
Mhm.
I take the role, I need to be the perfect CEO from day one. And this is so hard to do because we look at big CEOs from huge multi-billion dollar companies and we imagine that they were like this from day one. And it wasn't like this. For most people, this is a journey and you actually grow into the role. And I think this is so important. What you said is actually see what the expectations are and what's needed of you. And also give yourself the pace, pace
Mhm.
yourself to actually
Mhm.
grow into the role because it's a transition. It's not a given. It's not a default that you shift your way of operating and your mindset from day one.
I very much agree with what you said, and I want to emphasize that, we have the impression when we step into the CEO role that we are the ones who will change the role. But very often, the role will change us as well. And I think that what you're describing is two types of pressure that look very much the same. So in corporate, when you have a new CEO, the tensions will be from within the ecosystem. Let's imagine that we have a CEO, of the market in Romania, Moldova, or, Czechia, Slovakia, and so on. Who is your key stakeholder? The regional leadership. So you need to find the muscles and the courage to identify them, to anticipate their needs, to have conversations, formal, informal dialogue, and so on and so forth. This is an incredibly important skill to navigate an ecosystem. From what you're describing, as a founder, this pressure can be a bit internal as well because you have a vision. You want to grow the company into, a sort of shape. And I think it can be a bit even easier to forget about some stakeholders that could make or break the company that you want to build, because the stakeholders are not so obvious. Here in corporate, they're obvious. They're your reporting line. But as a founder, I think that the tension is more internalized, perhaps.
Yeah, for sure. It's more internalized. And like many things in founder-led company, it's self-generated.
Mm,
So you generate the pressure, you put it on yourself, and also the expectations. Sometimes you don't have that many people to express their expectations to you. Maybe the people from the team or your co-founders cannot even pinpoint what they expect of you.
mm,
So it's really a tough dance here, like dancing with your own expectations, with what you might believe others expect of you,
mhm,
and with things that build up, because the pace in a startup or a scale up is so fast,
mm,
and stakeholders start to grow around you. So maybe in the beginning it's just a co-founder team, then you start building a bigger team, start recruiting people, then maybe you start having investors or signing a partnership or having customers or users. So stakeholders start piling up.
mhm,
And then I think there is this pressure of how do I handle all of this? And I cannot operate the way I did before and the way I did until now. I
mm,
really need to step up my game and pay attention to this more than to maybe execution or delivering the product and so on.
mhm. I'm very much with you in this, and if I were to visualize, our conversation, I would put it like what you're describing is more like teenagerhood, when you grow really fast and you understand, like, I'm stepping into a new phase of my life. I'm legally, responsible now for what I'm trying to build. All of a sudden, I have new groups around and so on. In corporate, and when I say corporate, I mean traditionally multinationals with operations in, our region, in our countries. I see them as a bit like the menopause phase in life, right? It's a
Okay.
different type of teenagerhood. Is the phase of wisdom, is the phase of deep transformation. There's no more accelerated growth because the markets are very often saturated. So you need to reinvent yourself in the light of a new reality. Your body functions differently. Your resources look different. The expectations from you are different. So it is, if you will, at both ends of a continuum, we would have a similar process, a process of transformation, a process of a need to acknowledge the quality of resources we still have available, the type of ecosystems we need to build so we can actually move forward either for accelerated growth or for, sustainable and sustained transformation.
Mhm. Yeah, I think this is nicely put as phases of life, and it's also phases of business. So if the
Yeah.
business actually grows and becomes more mature, you get to that type of stakeholder relations and that type of role as a CEO that you're describing more in the corporate area. So it totally makes sense. I would like to go into something more specific that I know is really on the minds of many, many founders, and this is delegation. It's
Mm,
one topic that is apparently so obvious. We all know that you need to delegate, but
mm,
it happens so rarely, and it can be so hard to do.
mm,
I see it often with my clients because they come in the coaching process with me with a business goal in mind. And they struggle to focus on that business goal oftentimes because they're so caught up in the day-to-day operations, in
mm,
what's happening in each moment. And while we know it's necessary, why do you struggle with delegating it now? This is the question. And
mm,
from my experience, I think it's two things. It's not that simple. It's one, identity, and the other is systems. And I think with identity is it's like if you still act as the best expert on your team, you're probably struggling between control and overload because you're trying to
mm,
keep the standards that you had as an expert with everybody. And so you need to be present in many things, and the team maybe will demand your attention and your feedback constantly, but you will feel the overload as the business grows and the activity becomes more complex. So the shift that needs to happen eventually is from I do the best work to I enable my team to do their best work.
Mm.
And this is such a big change, but it can be practiced. And what I found is that once you start practicing it, it's actually enjoyable for many founders. Before many of them have ideas about how this will happen and how quality might drop or problems might occur. But once they start practicing it, usually it's a good surprise that it works better than they've imagined. But this is actually the moment when the second idea comes in place, and that is systems. Because in my view, delegation should almost run on autopilot. So it should be obvious who needs to handle a project or a task when it occurs. If it's a decision that you need to make on spot, or you need to remind yourself to make, oh, I need to delegate what to delegate now, it won't work. So for this, you don't need like a Bible of procedures, something huge, but you as a founder need to have the clarity on what's the job of each team member, and that includes yourself. You might be surprised, Christina, that in many founder-led companies, everybody has a role and most people have job descriptions, but founders never do, almost never do, because they're everywhere and sometimes nowhere because of this. So if you know for sure what the role of each of the team members is and what's their workload and what each of them is best at, the decision becomes simple. It should be obvious from one point on, it should be obvious. And I think for founders, I always say this to my clients, if you're doing other people's jobs, you're probably neglecting your own. And your job is actually to drive the business forward. Usually in founder-led companies, especially in earlier stages, there aren't many people driving the business. So it's actually your job and you cannot delegate this. So it's so important to stick to your job or to make some space for it. Because if you're always in the trenches, you'll get yourself and the business stuck there in the same place you are in right now. So for the business to go next level, to grow bigger, to mature and so on, you have to already be mentally there. And this means to detach for a while, to take a break from execution, to actually reflect, strategize, and so on. Yeah. But I know that delegation isn't that of a big thing in the corporate world for CEOs. Is it?
Oh, let me blow a myth.
Okay, let's do this. Let's get right to it.
Let me blow. Yeah, you would be surprised.
Mhm.
Indeed, delegation is a. So let's consider delegation a leadership skill, right?
Yeah.
And you're right that quite often in any type of leadership development programs in organizations, this skill is being taught. But it can be taught at the theoretical level, and it doesn't necessarily mean that it is well done in practice. So, and again, you can take a look around you and see how the boss delegates, and you can learn good practices or bad practices and try to do it differently. But essentially, good delegation is a human capability. And I think that is incredibly important both for the founder CEOs and for corporate CEOs to get to the realization and to the emotional maturity that the whole is more than the sum of the parts. And and not just to delegate, but to enable and empower, to essentially take parts of the business, place them in the hands of someone with visibility, with clarity, with trust. And also, as you said, by carrying one's expertise lightly, because there is nothing worse than a boss who did our job great. We already have tough, large shoes to fill. And if the boss doesn't know how to delegate, we're in big trouble. So essentially, I believe that I'm encouraging even the corporate CEOs. I mean, I encourage them to think or to make themselves replaceable as soon as possible, right? Think with the exit in sight. May that exit be the exit from your business or the exit from your role, which can come in 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, and make yourself replaceable as soon as possible. And I will give you an example from my media training practice where the situation wasn't there. So one of my clients had a car accident. And the second day, and it was during the night. And the second day in the morning, 6 o'clock, Czech television calls the CFO, who was second in line to be the CEO. And the CFO was deeply unprepared to speak on behalf of the company, to translate to the world what happened, right? That's exactly the type of situations that we need to anticipate. I mean, it's not just about delegating what I already know how to do and that needs to be done, but creating scenarios in which you have to be replaceable because this is not about you. This is about the business, right? And as long as like, as a CEO, doesn't matter if you're the founder or if you're the corporate CEO, you are in the service of something greater than yourself. And that's what you serve. That's what you're trying to uplift. Therefore, by making yourself replaceable, you are actually creating conditions for the system to thrive regardless of your choices or of what could happen to you. May it be, car accident, or it can be sickness, or it can be, specific life circumstances. So I think it's very important to have this conversation. I appreciate your perspective on the delegation as a mental emotional footprint and systems. But I definitely don't think that established corporate organizations have this issue as obviously solved as it may look at the first regard.
Good to know. Okay. See, this is why it's good to have this conversation, like
Mm.
really to also debunk some myths because we sometimes look at big companies and we think from some points of view that they have it all figured out. And as I see, it's not the case all the time. But as you were speaking about delegation and about the team, a corporate CEO doesn't have the privilege or the opportunity to actually build a team from scratch as it happens in founder-led companies so often. And I wanted to ask, this is a particular situation, like what happens when a new CEO inherits a team that's used to their old boss?
Yeah.
What's happening?
Mhm. Well, I call this, that whenever the head of a team is being replaced, this throws the whole team back into the forming state. So let's hope that, the new team, the old team with the new boss, that the members of the team have at least a bit of curiosity. Let's assume that they are not all of them skeptical about what's next. And if you're wise and experienced as a CEO, you will work with that curiosity and you will invite them for conversations. You will map their motivations, their needs, and you will be humble enough to ask questions and to zip it and to listen. Because as you listen both for the motivation of the other, but you are activating the sense of recognition. The worst thing a new CEO can do is to take over a team and then tell them, until now, you've done it this way. And from now on, I'm here. I'm the second incarnation of Jesus. So we're going to do things differently, right? Because I'm here. That is essentially a slap in the face of everything this team built so far. And there's nothing worse than trying to build something new and fresh on a lack of recognition. So being humble, recognizing the good in what was, asking questions, listening, taking it all in is the wisest thing that you can do. It doesn't mean that you will keep all the team. It doesn't mean that you will keep the structure. It doesn't mean that you will not work around, but you need data, including the informal data that people will give you through their tone of voice, through their body language, through their willingness to talk to you or not. So you need to collect the human data before you make an impression about the quality of the team and about the future of the team, the architecture of the team that you have a right to build, even in corporate, right? I'm just going to say one more thing to this because I experienced this with several CEOs. So sometimes when we're part of a large multinational and you're building your team, and then someone, for whatever reason, remains without a job, right? And they need to move people around. So guess what? You get a new team member, even if you don't need that person or the business doesn't need that person. So what do you do, right? How do you absorb this type of bigger waves, which are more about politics than anything else? How do you integrate that? How do you absorb that? So the level of emotional adaptability of a corporate CEO is tremendous. You can't be allergic to whatever, to what's coming your way, and you need to have this capacity to see the bigger picture. And when I say the bigger picture, I mean the larger ecosystem, including this type of sometimes abrasive interventions like being dropped a new team member and shaking the waters that you've been just trying to build.
I can see we both have a communication background, Christina. You couldn't emphasize, I think, the importance of communication more.
Mm.
And I think it's always the third path or the third option that people don't think about. I see it so often with my clients. It's like black or white,
Mm.
all or nothing. I need to choose between this or and that. And oftentimes they simply don't think about asking and listening and talking. And this is often, so whenever you feel like I have to choose between A and B and I have to do it myself, regardless of how hard it is for me, maybe the solution is the third one, and that is communication. Actually, talking to the people, to the stakeholders, whoever it is, asking them what they think about it or what's their point of view on this, and maybe co-creating a solution and so on. So I think communication is so undervalued
Yeah.
and ignored because oftentimes the CEOs feel that they need to do everything by themselves and to make these decisions by themselves, that they forget to actually communicate and use their team or other stakeholders who would be so happy to contribute and to have a point of view in this conversation.
Spot on. And I want to emphasize that perhaps this type of hero CEO is a bit more present in our region where, after the fall of communism in post-communist countries and post-Soviet countries, we grew through resilience, we grew through heroics, we grew through scarcity. So the footprint of the hero CEO could be a bit more present here than in the West, where, many established business people could relax a bit more over the last 50, 60 years. And what I'm trying to say is that this the hero CEO makes communication about two things. First, there is this obligation of I'm the CEO, so I'm supposed to know. And if I don't know, it means I'm not good enough. The imposter syndrome may kick in.
Mhm.
But also, I'm noticing with some CEOs, both corporate and entrepreneurs, that when they open the space for dialogue, they feel like whatever is coming their way comes like an obligation. So if you are my board member, if you're my investor, and you're expressing your need, they're so used to serving and working hard that they take that input as an obligation. And sometimes they're just afraid of that because they already have so many things on their plate. And I want to make this very clear. When someone is expressing their position, their point of view, their needs, they are not automatically your obligations. They are input for dialogue and co-creative solutions, as you say, Katrina. It is not, being concerned about receiving too many assignments from various stakeholders should never become a burden or an obstacle in front of quality communications. The solutions, the good solutions, the reliable, long-term resistant solutions are co-created, and that you can achieve only through communication and dialogue.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting that you went into this regional specifics, let's say, because we've talked about the hero CEO, but also about the imposter syndrome. And apparently, it's a
Mm,
paradox here. But I think it's exactly the expectation that you are the hero that makes you feel like an imposter. And
mm,
I also talk about this with my clients. Like, I need to have the answers to every question. I need to know the solution to every problem. I need to be able to actually do everything that is requested of me.
mm.
And this puts such a huge pressure and makes you feel like a fraud.
Yeah. And I want to share something which I experienced myself as a, in my practice as a coach. So when I was a journalist, I was asking questions to get information so I can translate it to the people. And when I became a coach, I was, because initially I was a mentor. So as a mentor, you're supposed to know, you're supposed to have the solutions. And I would enter our sessions, my client sessions, terrified because like my own expectations from myself of knowing were tremendous, and I never knew if I'm able to meet the expectations of the person in front of me until I actually learned to coach. And coaching is about asking good questions, taking in the input of the other part, and building, co-create a solution, in the case of CEOs and entrepreneurs. So my point is that not knowing is liberating. And this is a precious message, particularly for the men out there, for the majority of founders and CEOs. Because, and when I have conversation with gentlemen, not knowing is terrifying. It is almost like an unveiling of the, structural weaknesses behind, and that is the trigger that activates the imposter syndrome. But in reality, wisdom is accepting that not knowing is liberating. You can't know. You shouldn't know. You will know when you actually have conversations with others and you build whatever co-creative solution, because only that kind of solution has long legs and a chance for survival and future.
Mm. Yeah, I can totally say I share this journey with you. I also come from a consultancy background, and I had the same tendency and the same expectation of myself.
Mm,
Instead of this with coaching, I started to lean more into the connection, the relationship,
mm,
and the presence. And there are so many leaders right now who are experiencing or learning a coaching leadership style, and this is so valuable that and I also have clients that are telling me it's like, I want to learn how to ask these questions instead of always starting first and leading with the answer and being the first to talk in a brainstorming or in a discussion and so on. And this is so valuable, and I think
mm,
it's liberating, as you're saying, that you're not a leader because you know all the answers. You're a
mm.
leader because you're ready to make the effort to make it work, to gather everybody and to
Mm.
make it work,
Yeah,
and to learn if it's necessary. And this is
exactly.
not a problem.
You mentioned a very important word. You mentioned the word presence. And
Mm.
I think that you're absolutely right that this coaching attitude is incredibly valuable for leaders today. And let's not forget where we are, corporate and entrepreneurs alike. We are in a space of massive transformation. It's not just AI triggered transformation, but let's remember that our region, Central, East, and Southern Europe, plus post-Soviet countries, we are going through our second economic transformation. The first economic transformation was the fall of communism, rise of foreign investors, and our economies grew through the influx of foreign investments into our country's economies and region, right? Now we're going through the second economic transformation, which means once we have received this type of, it's almost like the food we got from our adoptive parents, right? The adoptive parents are gone. Now we're on our own 2 feet, and we need to define our future. We need to define our destiny. And that is confusing and that is transformative. But that's where we are together. And we really need to face this type of uncertainty with exactly this type of curious, humbly apprehensive, but also self-confident attitude because we have so much in our region, our CEOs here, they have resilience. They grew through adversity. We didn't have that much money in our region after all. So we needed to make, the best with what we were given. We are adaptable. We are innovative. We're creative. We're very highly educated, wonderful skills. We're hardworking. And like all of these wonderful things come in the room with a CEO from our region, entrepreneur or corporate CEO. And I want to encourage everyone listening to us, don't forget about those qualities that enter with you, because that's what has your back. You don't have to know. It's enough for you to trust what you have behind you to hold your back as you are facing the unknown, other people, their expectations, their questions, and ultimately the co-creative future.
Right. Thank you for sharing this and for giving this, I don't know, like big ball of confidence to everybody who's watching. I think it's important to remember our resources and rely on them more than just fearing the future and the unknown. So I also wanted to say we're more than halfway through, and as you can see, Christina and me can bounce off each other like maybe for a long time. So if you have any questions or anything you'd like to share in the comments, please do it. We still have lots of time to answer them or to comment on them. So please feel free to do it. So, Christina, now that we're approaching the end of this, I wanted to actually propose an exchange between
Sure.
the two of us. So, if there is one thing that founders could learn from the corporate C-suite that's
Mhm.
missing and that's maybe standard in your world, what would it be?
Hmm. Being a corporate CEO is being a curator of wonderful resources that were there before you, are there as you are part of them, and will be there after you. So you are a curator. It's almost, I compare this with the mother in the family, right? You are there to see the system, to feed the system, to nourish the system, to fine-tune some processes. But essentially, like your job is to notice the system and to nourish the system with the awareness that tomorrow you may be gone, but your legacy better endure. So, acting as a curator, as the mother of the system, not just as the father who goes out and fights with mammoths and brings in the deals and the investors. I think that this is a very important inner energetic shift that founders could learn from corporate CEOs who are navigating this type of complex ecosystems with wisdom, with emotional agility, and with this attitude of curating resources for the next CEO.
Hmm. That's so interesting. Such an interesting perspective. Thank you for that.
How about what, corporate CEOs we can learn? I mean, there are so many corporate CEOs who right now they're kind of trying to tune up their inner entrepreneur. So what corporate CEOs could learn from founders?
Mm. Well, good question. I'm thinking it's the reverse. I think it's the opposite. So while founders need to maybe pay more attention to structuring the business and building the system and everything, for CEOs, it might somehow be the opposite, like seeing through all the layers and cutting through the heavy processes and the corporate noise and actually focus on what is essential. And in particular, I'm thinking about proximity because founders operate, grassroots. They are hands-on, in touch with all areas of the business, many times too much.
Mhm.
But corporate CEOs, on the other hand, they can be 3 to 4 layers away from the real feedback, from the real pulse of the market, of the organization, and so on. And I think what they can learn from founders is obviously not stay hands-on, but stay in touch with the
Mhm.
more distant stakeholders or the more distant phenomenon that are close to your business, like users or customers or people from the bottom of the hierarchy in the company, in order to make your own observations and practice your intuition and hopefully make more informed decisions than just from data or reports.
Yeah. I'm so with you on this. And I know and I remember the stories of a couple of CEOs who, when they took over, corporate CEOs, when they took over the role, the first thing they did, they went to the shop floor and they served there for a day or for a week simply to get embedded. And sometimes without people knowing who they were. Right. So it's kind of a mystery CEO active in place. And it's not just about observing people, but like really taking in the reality of the business. I had a similar client who works for a food delivery company. So that's what they did. They became couriers for a day to see how that works, to see the type of challenges that they're facing. I think we can never forget, again, it's so easy for us to think that as a CEO, founder, or corporate, we are there to kind of provide the lighthouse to the whole organization, right? To create a clarity, to attract the good resources, and so on and so forth. But we should never forget that we are here to serve. And yes, there are multiple parts in the ecosystem that need to be fueled by us and seen by us and respected and taken to the next level. But we are here to serve. And that's the type of humble attitude that again will do so much to trigger innovation ultimately, right? Because when you are humble, when you're looking at things with a bit of like looking a bit down rather than looking from the top down to the people, you can notice different things. You can notice different dynamics. You are safe for people to come to tell you what doesn't work. And psychological safety is a big thing in our region. Like we come from communism, where if you spoke the truth, you end up in jail. And this is not something that we were, born or educated to always speak the truth, stand in our truth with integrity, and face the consequences. So we need to learn this. We need to become safe for the people around us to speak the truth as founders and as corporate CEOs. So I think we've got a lot of learning. And once again, there is nothing more beautiful in the world than the role of CEO, because that is the perfect vehicle for bringing good power into the world. But good power starts with self-reflection, starts with how much time you spend with yourself to really discover, how to make this role more than about making good money for yourself, for the investors, for the shareholders, but it's about transforming what you do into a vehicle for positive transformation in the lives of your employees, of clients, of our economies, of the region. It's about so much more. That's why I love this work, because there is nobody better to be an ambassador or an amplifier of good power than CEOs.
I
So,
agree. Their impact is so huge that it's really worth working on this and really putting in the effort, also from my part, to have this impact through them, of course. I think for founders, the mission is much more alive because it's the reason they started the business. And they have this in mind, and they always want to bring a product to life, to serve a certain community or ICP and so on. And I think this is very, very present with them. Sometimes it makes them do crazy stuff because it's like so strong. But I think for corporate CEOs, it's really adhering, like where do you want to serve? It's also a choice, like choosing the organization where you want to serve. And also finding a mission for yourself, I think, is important. As a CEO, you can have your own approach and your own mission, even if you cannot control everything in a big company. You have a headquarter and you have a mandate and targets and everything I can imagine. But you can find your own mission and your own approach of how you want to serve. And you can stay true to that. So I think it's finding different ways of doing this in each environment.
absolutely true.
Yeah. So I would like to go in the opposite direction, and because sometimes this annoys me, and I want to see your take on this. I hear so much bad advice for leaders in the public space, especially for founders, and I will talk about this. What's the worst advice people give to new leaders, especially from what you've seen?
Wait and see.
Uh-huh.
Well, wait and see. You need to like only make decisions when you feel fully ready, when everything is in place, when I don't know.
Mhm.
And actually, data shows that one of the things most CEOs regret is not making faster changes in the executive team, right? Within the first 3 months, ideally, the latest by the end of the first half a year in the role. So I think that wait and see until everything clears carries more risk than reward to a wide extent.
Such an interesting point of view because it's somehow the total opposite of what founders do. They never wait and see. So sometimes, because I work with tech founders a lot, they also need a lot of data to make decisions.
Mhm.
Um, and sometimes they do wait and see to make decisions, but in general, the pace is so fast that there's no waiting involved. What I see as a very bad advice in the startup and scale up world is just the hustle culture. Is you
Mm.
need to push harder. You need to push yourself. If something doesn't work, work 10 times harder and it will. And I think there are so many business gurus preaching this, and they have generated this hustling culture that is actually hurting so many founders. I see it myself, and hurting also businesses. I see it time and time again.
Mhm.
And of course, there are stages in a business life when you will need to put in the hard work, lift the heavy weights, as they say, but this cannot and should not become like your modus operandi forever and ever. If your
Mhm.
only answer to any question or to any problem is work more,
Mhm.
you will burn out and you will get stuck in this phase in that you're in, as I said earlier.
No question whatsoever about that. And I want to address something which is it's personally important for me. It's sensitive, but I feel the need to say it. I
Mhm.
think we look up and we take our role models from the US, which is a
Mhm.
very specific entrepreneurial culture. And
Sure.
thanks to the last, 60, 80 years, the US operated with a global Swedish table at their disposal, right? So when you want to take advantage, when you feel that the resources are almost unlimited and you want to take advantage of building global companies really fast, this kind of advice could make sense in that context and in under those circumstances. But looking up to this type of role models and while discounting and ignoring our own context, our own bodies, our own cultures, our own dreams of the vision of our company, that's just getting ourselves drunk on cold water. It's not going to work, and it's not worth it to pay for this type of self-delusion with a heart attack that will leave your children, orphans by the time you're 40 or 45 or 50 because you were so enamored with Elon Musk that you forgot to take the pulse of your real business and culture. So I think we need to, rip the veil from our own eyes and start to look at our role models with a bit more sober approach, with a bit more grounded approach, and to really think what makes sense for my business, for what I'm trying to build, short, mid, long term, and what makes sense for me, because you're not the business. You're not, your life should not be just about this business. That's another reason why I'm encouraging both CEOs and founders think with the exit in sight, build with the exit in sight in mind, because when you do that, you will be more stimulated. It's not just about making a lot of money when by the time you're done, But this is about building something that is sustainable, that's a legacy, and that can hold once you step out of the process. And ultimately, when you're looking at the life of the really inspiring investors and founders and so on, and CEOs, what you see them keeping once they glow of the big business is over is their family, is their relationships, is their friends, their friendships. There are two great books about women CEOs. Good Power by Jeannie Rometty, the former CEO of IBM, and My Life in Full by Indra Nooyi, the CEO of PepsiCo. And these books should be compulsory literature for every CEO, because you see you see the growth, you see the inner dynamics at play, but then you also see what happens. How does it feel to be out, right? Once you have exited, what's left? And if your values have been aligned, and if you kept your health, and if you kept your relationships, then you can call yourself a successful CEO, entrepreneur, or corporate. If you have dropped one of the glass balls, which is your health or your relationships that matter to you, or your friendships, um, sure, you can write yourself in history for raising something, but maybe 2, 3 years from now, you will be forgotten, while you will be just holding a broken glass bowl in your hands, and that's just a pity.
I think this is actually the best way to wrap this up. To keep this in mind, because there are so many ambitions and things to do and things to learn as a first-time CEO, and you want to take it all in and do it as fast as you can. But it's also important to keep it sustainable, because you will want maybe to be a CEO also with 3 times from now, and maybe to have another business or another life beyond this later on. So I think this is maybe the one thing that I got from today, is setting a clear image of what and how you want to be as a first-time CEO. Not the hero, not the returning Jesus, not the American Hormozy and so on, but who do you want actually to be, and stop acting and stepping into this role.
Yeah.
So, Christina, I want to thank you so much. This was exactly the conversation I was hoping for today.
Mhm.
And to everybody who is watching us, thank you so much for being today with us. Follow us both for more on this topic. If you have any questions or things that you want to discuss, feel free to DM any of us, to reach out. This is what we do usually day to day. So you can really rely on us for this. Again, thanks everyone for being here, and see you next time.
It was a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.